Hi, I'm Cassidy Hall. I am doing this recording as the first part of Zoom for Effective Meetings. Note that if you want to get back to any of this information, there's the hyperlink bit.ly/doceo zoom 2. So that hyperlink will have these slides available in it and all of this information. So we're going to start off looking at how do we access Zoom. For the University of Idaho, you're going to go to zoom.uidaho.edu. And when you go to that link, you will see that it gives you three options to join, host, or sign in. You're going to want to sign in. And the reason for that is that you want access to all of the tools that we're going to take a look at today. The other thing I've linked here is the Zoom Help Center, and this is just for after the fact. If you have follow-up questions about a certain feature, the Help Center is actually quite wonderful. So if I had a question about polling, for instance, I could type that in out here. It's going to bring up a bunch of different options for me, and if I click on that, I get a short video about polling and then a written tutorial with pictures about polling as well. So quite effective Help Center, and I suggest that you use it as you come up with questions. So let's talk about being in the meeting. I know that you have had the experience of connecting to meetings virtually where you don't feel like you're part of the meeting. You wonder if people even see that you're in there. So I think that there is a importance to being seen and heard in a meeting. Often when I'm holding a meeting, I ask people to use their cameras. I ask people to use their microphones whenever they have a question or they want to speak up about something. But I also tend to use some other Zoom tools such as chat, file sharing, polling, possibly annotating the screen or using the whiteboard. So those are some of the features that we'll go through today. I also try to provide meeting information prior to the meeting. So if there is an agenda, I'm giving that out typically the day before, possibly 2 days before, depending on the content of the meeting. But if I'm offering more than one document to people, what I tend to do is put it in a OneDrive folder so that I can share the entire folder with them, and then they have the ease to open the documents themselves. I prefer this to sending them an email with 8 documents attached to it because that gets a little bit messy. So the more that we can use features like OneDrive that we are given as part of being employees at campus, I think that those things make our lives a little bit easier. I will also show you how to personalize your Zoom information. I think that's really important for you to have a profile connected to your Zoom account. And I'll also show you how to utilize reports for attendance. Okay, so we're going to jump right in and we're going to start off with your profile settings. Now, how do you get to those? Well, after you've signed into your Zoom account, you should see something like this. And I can get to my profile in 2 ways. I can click on my profile up here in the right-hand corner, or I can go over here to the left-hand menu and click the profile button. And here's what your profile looks like. Okay, so if you wanted to change your picture here or change any of your information, you can click edit here to edit your information. You can click change here to change your picture that is in here for your profile. Couple other things that I recommend doing down here. Your personal meeting ID was automatically given to you, and it's just a random generated 10-digit ID that you probably don't recognize. If you want to change that, what I do is I click edit and I change it to my phone number on campus. That way, if somebody needs to make a quick Zoom connection to me, I can say go to Zoom and dial my phone number, and they're going to connect to my Zoom meeting, my personal meeting space, as easy as that. Okay, so it's a real easy way to kind of connect those pieces and get rid of that 10-digit number that you're never going to remember. The other thing you can do is define a personal link for yourself. So you will see that when I click customize, the only part of your personal link that you can change is the end piece. So everybody starts with this uidaho.zoom.us/my, but then you have control over what's at the end there. So this meeting link is the meeting link that participants get if I'm inviting them to my personal meeting room. Okay. Now, a lot of times when we schedule meetings, we have the option to use our personal meeting room, but other times we use other rooms, and we'll get into that a little bit more when we go into scheduling. Okay. So those are just some options that are in here that you can think about for your actual profile. The next thing we're going to look at is your meeting settings, okay? So some things that you might want to consider in meeting settings, we'll go through those here, and I have sort of a list here, but I want to show you where those are. So back again, when I'm in my Zoom account, I was in profile, but I'm going to click down here to settings. There are lots and lots of options for meeting settings, but note that some of the features that we talk about, you have to turn on in order to be able to see them within your Zoom menus, okay? So some features are auto turned on. You can consider turning them off if you want to, but I'm just gonna go through the highlights of things that I think you could consider. Now, here is referring back to your personal meeting ID. You can use your personal meeting ID when scheduling a meeting. If you turn that on here, that's going to use it for every single meeting that you ever schedule. So I think that's a very personal choice. If you have a staff position per se, that you know that that personal meeting room is going to be used all the time, and any other time that you host a meeting, you really don't need a different room from that, then you could turn it on here and it will just auto go to that each time. What I tend to do is when I schedule a meeting, I select at that point, is it going to be my personal meeting room or is it going to be another meeting room? Okay, so that is totally optional. Note down here that if you mute participants upon entry out here, you're doing that for every single meeting that you set up. The reason why I do not have that clicked here is because occasionally, not right now, but typically, we might have people connect from another classroom on campus or on one of our other campuses where they're connecting as a classroom and there's multiple people in the room. In those rooms, they don't necessarily know how to unmute the microphone. So if I'm muting them upon entry, that could pose a problem. So I don't suggest doing that here. I do that again within the meeting when I'm setting it up. Note that chat is auto turned on as well as private chat. So if for some reason you do not want chat within your meetings, you can turn those features off here. I have a lot of instructors who don't like private chat during their classes, so they tend to turn that off. So you can see when I click on it, it says my settings have been updated. If I want to go back and turn it back on, it will give me that message once again. Okay, so turning things on and off in here are very simple. I do suggest file transfer. It's not something I use frequently. However, if I don't have it turned on, I can't use it when I'm in a meeting. So if I'm hosting a meeting and I have that file transfer turned on, I can use the chat box to transfer files to all of my participants, which can be downloaded at their end. Okay, so it's a very, very convenient tool. Like I said, you have to have it turned on to be able to utilize it. Note here that I have the polling feature turned on so that if I want to send out a little survey question to my attendees, I can do that on the fly. Again, have to have it turned on in order to be able to use it. Note that your screen sharing is auto turned on. It is turned on for all participants, and it is made so that only the host is able to start sharing when somebody else is sharing. You have options to control what that look like here. So you can, play around with those options. I tend to like it this way. I like the fact that people can go ahead and share their screen without me having to do anything to enable that for them. Okay. Down here, you'll note that I have the annotation and whiteboards turned on. We'll take a look at what those are. Those are auto turned on for you, but they're very helpful tools. Nonverbal feedback, you'll see, is not turned on for you. If you want more abilities for nonverbal than participants to be able to raise their hand, then you'll want to turn this feature on. And I'll show you what those tools look like. But basically, within my participants menu, when somebody is connected to one of my meetings, they see the option to do a thumbs up or a thumbs down or a yes or a no, things like that. So there are other nonverbal feedback buttons that will pop up for them. I also have breakout rooms turned on. Again, if you want to use them, have to have it turned out on here. Really simple to use, and we will go through that in part 2. I do have virtual backgrounds turned on. I noticed that a lot of people now, especially that we are all stuck at home, are having fun with virtual backgrounds. So I suggest that you take a look at those and see what you might do with them. They can be quite fun to utilize and do work now without the green screen being necessary. Okay. Note down here that I do not have my waiting room turned on. That is another thing that I turn on per meeting. I use waiting rooms, especially for things like if I'm having meetings with students and I have back-to-back meetings scheduled. Maybe I want to maintain privacy for one student without the other one being able to connect to that same meeting before it's over. So in that case, if I turn on the waiting room, then the second student gets stuck in the waiting room until I'm ready to admit them into the same room. Okay, so that just helps with privacy issues if you need it to, and if you are indeed using one room for your office hours or things like that. Okay, here are your email notifications. If you are getting bombarded by emails via Zoom, turn some of those things off. If you don't want to know when attendees are joining before the meeting and things like that, feel free to kind of control that in here and what that might look like. Also, if you need somebody else to have the privilege of scheduling meetings for you, you can assign that down here at the bottom. Okay, so those are the meeting settings I wanted to look at, but note here that there is a tab on recording settings. So if we switch over to that real quickly, you will see that you've got local recording options and cloud recording options. And note within the cloud recording options that you have different choices that you can make here. Okay, so these are some of the options related to recording. I'm also going to show you where some of the other recording features are hidden, okay? But that is some of them, and very important that you know where they are located in case you want to use any of these things. So the next thing we're going to look at then are these other settings. So they are video settings, recording settings, and accessibility settings. There are many other settings that are in here that I'm not going to go over. I'm just kind of going over the main things that would be my suggestions for more effective meetings. Okay, so how do I get to my other settings? Well, I have a meeting opened over here, and if I use the up arrow next to start video and go into video settings, you will see that I pop up on the screen for one thing, because now I'm in video. And things you might want to consider here is, do you want to enable HD? Do you want to turn off the mirror my video feature? So I have instructors, for instance, that use a document camera as one of their cameras. So they have to turn off the mirroring or it doesn't look right on the screen. There is also something in here called touch up my appearance. So if you want your skin to look smoothed out, I don't know how it does it, but I turn it on just in case, you can turn that feature on. You'll also notice down here at the bottom that there is a box that you might consider checking that says display up to 49 participants per screen in gallery view. If you have larger meetings, you might want to consider utilizing that. Your gallery view button is typically in the upper right hand corner of your screen, and you can either be on speaker view, which means that it will highlight the person who's talking, or you can be on gallery view and it takes your attendees and kind of spreads them evenly across the screen. So I like to click this because some of my meetings are larger, and then it will distribute up to 49 participants on one page. That makes it a little easier for me than having to tab through to see who's talking. Okay, so just something that you could consider. Here are your options for virtual backgrounds. So you could go in here and enable the feature and play with your virtual backgrounds if you want to. Note that you can upload your own pictures to make that work. Here are your recording settings. So this is really, really important. When you record to Zoom, and we'll go through that in the second part, But when you decide to record to Zoom, you can go in here to designate where you want all of those recordings to go. Note that if you don't change it, it will automatically create a folder called Zoom within your Documents folder, and that is where all of your stuff will go. So if you want to change that location, please do it here. The last thing I might recommend to you is accessibilities. If you want to always show the meeting controls instead of having to hover, you can turn that feature on here. And we'll look forward to